Welcome, and today we are going to talk about the Young Avengers and how they have appeared so far within the MCU universe. Marvel has slowly been introducing these characters into the main timeline for the last couple of years. I, as a longtime Young Avengers fan, have been very excited to witness these changes to the Marvel universe. Here, I'm going to be telling you about where we have seen them pop up so far and where I think they're going to be popping up in the near future. First up, Iron Lad. First appearing in the original Volume number 1 publication of the Young Avengers in 2005, we met the character Nathaniel Richards, also known as Iron Lad. This character, we find out later, is one of the MCU equivalents of a variant of Kang the Conqueror, a very notorious time traveler and villain in Marvel Comics. This version of Kang helps form the Young Avengers in hopes of stopping himself in the future. We have seen him in the MCU so far, played by Jonathan Majors in episode 6 of Loki, helping introduce and explain the concept of the multiverse and the different timelines to our characters. This character could end up being pivotal to the upcoming future of Marvel. Second up, Eli Bradley. We have so far seen Eli very quickly in a blink and you'll miss it moment in Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney+. The first time we seen him, I literally fell to the floor in excitement because of how excited I was to get another Young Avenger canonically into the MCU.
Oh, I'm so happy.
I'm just gonna.
I'm so happy.
So far, he's been portrayed by Eliza Richardson and has had about 2 or 3 scenes within the actual show. In the future, it is likely he will play the character of Patriot, a character who abuses the mutant growth hormone and eventually ends up receiving a blood transfusion from his grandfather, the first Black Captain America, and inheriting the super soldier serum powers. This could end up being really important and cool in the MCU if they decide to follow his original origin story, because it does imply the existence of mutants in the first place. So he could be a good character to bring up along the new generation of mutants within the MCU, even though he himself is not a mutant. He is first seen in Disney Plus opening the door to his grandfather's house, and later walking through the Captain America exhibit at the Smithsonian. Third and fourth on our list are Wiccan and Speed. Wiccan and Speed in the comics are canonically Scarlet Witch's children, although there are a lot of different things that happen in the comics that lead this to be questionable for a time, but in the end they are still her children. And of course we have seen this so far within WandaVision itself, with her having her 2 children. Currently, Wiccan is played by Julian Hillard, and Speed is being played by Jet Klein, but the most likely thing that will happen here is that when the children come back to the main timeline, they will be aged up and given new actors to portray their more accurate ages in the comics. Wiccan is a very powerful being in the comics and has a strong connection to magic and manifestation, whereas Speed has powers very similar to Quicksilver. These characters could end up being played many different ways considering the origins and the relationship to their parents in the comics. They could be used for ushering in the new age of mutants, or they could be brought back into different families like they are in Volume 2, with only a loose knowledge of their connection to the Scarlet Witch. But I doubt they'll go this way in the MCU based on how they've been portraying Wanda so far. I imagine the earliest we could see this reveal is in the next Doctor Strange movie, which is actually pretty crazy to think about for Young Avengers fans because this is coming really soon, and so far there's been no news of casting for who could be playing these characters in the long haul. Especially because Wiccan is such a fan favorite in the comics right now. Fifth on our list is one of my absolute favorites, Kate Bishop as Hawkeye. Now, of course, we just got the Hawkeye show, and this has been our first true introduction into what a Young Avengers character could look like. Kate is a big, important character for the YA in the comics, eventually becoming their de facto leader. Kate just had an amazing run in Hawkeye with great reception, and Hailee Steinfeld is definitely going to be playing this character well into the future, and potentially full-on taking the mantle. The last scene from the last episode definitely gives the impression that Clint full-on gave her the working duo title of Hawkeye, which is interesting because in the comics, she actually gets the title, officially anyway, from Captain America, but obviously that can't happen now, so the scene does make sense, although they did it in a different way than I expected them to, and I'm very happy to see we're most likely going to be getting a season 2 with this character. And with Clint, because I was real scared they were going to end up killing him. I'm quite thankful they didn't, because Kate and Clint have such a fantastic relationship in the comics, and I think they have a great opportunity to actually explore that more fully in another season of Hawkeye. Our 6th character from the original roster of the YA includes Cassie Lang as Stature. And this is a really interesting entry on this list because Cassie, like Kate, we have seen quite a bit on the screen so far. The difference with Cassie is we've seen multiple casting changes already. The original child version of Cassie being played by Abby Ryder, moving into Emma Furman in Endgame, and now being cast into a more well-known celebrity, Catherine Newton, from shows like Supernatural, playing Claire. This is going to be really interesting because in the comics, Ant-Man has to die for Cassie to fully become Stature, and then eventually it leads to her own death, sparking the continuation of the Young Avengers despite a lot of things that the YA goes through. The YA goes through a lot of traumatic changes in their first few years as being heroes, which sparked a lot of outrage against them. And finally, for our original roster of the Young Avengers and where they appear in the comics, we're going to talk about two non-YA members, Vision and Jessica Jones. Vision actually is one of the founding members of the YA, pushing forward the initiative to start it in the absence of heroes following some events in the comics. Vision rallies together to make sure the team is safe and to collectively find the team when a lot of other heroes at the time are pushing against the cause. Vision, of course, is played by Paul Bettany in the MCU and is seen everywhere. The biggest question with this is, of course, what is the current state of Vision within the MCU? Because at the moment, no one really knows, and Vision's character is one of the big what-ifs in the air right now, no pun intended. No one quite knows what's to come of this character. I personally really hope to see Paul Bettany back in the role because he is such a phenomenal actor, and Vision is an all-around great character, and he really does mentor these kids in the comics. Now, secondly, this might be a bit of a strange one, but I really wanted to include it. Jessica Jones. So if you don't read the comics, this is going to be a bit strange for you, but Jessica Jones in the original YA is actually pregnant at the time with her first child, and she becomes a mother-like figure and mentor to the YA, kind of against her better judgment, and I just wanted to really throw this in. But now with the introduction of Matthew into the MCU as Daredevil, we have that opportunity to bring forward these characters, and did a fantastic job in Jessica Jones, and I could definitely see they're bringing her over in some style. This particular one would be interesting because I do think the part of her being pregnant is integral to her role and her connection to these characters and wanting to be a mother-like figure or a protector-like figure to this group of children wanting to become heroes. So I don't know if they would use it in that way, but it is interesting to think about how this is a way they could potentially put Jessica back into the main MCU. Another interesting thing you could think about with this is what other character they could bring in to play a mentor-type figure towards these new heroes. Who would you like to see mentor the new era of heroes? Leave a comment down below with what you think. Now to Volume 2. The first character from the Volume 2 roster that we have seen so far in the MCU is actually, shockingly, Kid Loki. With the introduction of variants into the MCU, we actually got to see Kid Loki on Disney+, which was super cool as someone who has read the YA comics and knows a bit about what is happening with Loki in the last decade or so within the comics, because Loki has been a super weird and difficult character to actually follow in the comics because he's changed bodies and minds so many times. He's jumped in and out of himself. He's fought himself. There's different versions of himself that live within him while he's Kid Loki that he has to fight and overcome to become teenage Loki. It's quite a complicated subject, and I actually recommend looking into it yourself if you're a person who likes Loki, which I know a lot of the MCU fans are. And I think Kid Loki, more specifically Teen Loki, are really cool add-ons to his character that I'm interested to see if they take farther in the MCU, bringing back more of the variants. Not just of Loki, of other characters as well, which I think could be really interesting. But yeah, Kid Loki for sure. We have seen him, and there is a potential that he will come back because he is one of the Young Avengers for a time. Next up from the second roster, we have Miss America and/or America Chavez. We actually got a glimpse of America Chavez so far in the trailer for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I have wanted to make this video since I first seen Spider-Man in theaters because I seen it as the end credits, and I seen the flash of the star. She appears for like 2 seconds, which I'm sure I will have looped on the screen a few times now, and I seen that, and I yelped a little bit, and I was like, oh my god, America! We're getting more YA on the screen, and that's gonna be really cool. And we do know now from some leaked concept art that America Chavez was supposed to appear in Spider-Man No Way Home, but ended up having to get moved out, introduced in the new Doctor Strange movie because of the switched timeline from COVID-19 and other production delays. She could be used as a really important and cool character because her power is punching these interdimensional doorways into reality in the shape of stars, which connects quite closely to the multiverse being torn from Doctor Strange's botched spell from the end of Spider-Man. Now, as you can tell at this point, there's absolutely no denying that Marvel has been working towards building the Young Avengers to in the wider MCU within the next coming decade. To what extent we don't know yet, but I'm really hoping they become an integral part of the future. However, there is still 3 characters from the Avengers roster, whether you're thinking of Volume 1 or Volume 2, that are missing. 2 of these, I think, are possible throwaways that are unneeded, one of which is integral and we have to get at some point for some major reasons, which I will be getting into in a second, as well as a few other characters that could be joining depending on the circumstances of what happens in the next 5 years. I'll quickly go over the 2 we're missing from the second roster because they're a little less interesting. We are missing Noh-Varr and or Marvel Boy, who is a Kree experiment of sorts, who takes on multiple names throughout the run in the comics. I can see a few possible endpoints we could be seeing with him throughout the next 5 years of Marvel roster, but he doesn't seem overall integral to the plot at the moment, so I can see us skipping Noh-Varr. If not, I could see him being introduced either in a Guardians film or in the referenced in some way in the Skrulls movie or something intergalactic coming up in the future. The other character is Prodigy, and Prodigy I can see us getting or not getting depending on how X-Men and mutants end up getting incorporated into the MCU, because Prodigy is a character who is a mutant in the comics and is often seen as a bit controversial at times because of decisions he's made as a character, which has caused a lot of outlash and people just not to like his character. But I've seen it both ways. I've seen people who really love his character and people who really hate him, so a bit of a polarizing character. I don't know what they'll end up doing with him in the future. Now lastly, the character that has been bugging me for over 5 years now. We are still missing Hulkling, aka Teddy Altman. Now, Hulkling is the Sun-Dash Prince, half Kree, half Skrull, and oh my god. Every time they release a new Young Avengers character, I'm like, is it gonna be Teddy? Is it gonna be Teddy? Because the one thing we know pretty much for sure is that Teddy has to be introduced at this point for them to do a Young Avengers on screen, or Marvel is going to face massive amounts of backlash. Teddy, aka Hulkling, and Billy, aka Wiccan, are 2 of the first openly gay characters in the MCU. And if Marvel doesn't do this, I can see extreme backlash coming to the company. And it's integral to their characters, and it's important for who they are, and the growth of the coming generation of comics. The whole YA team has a lot of LGBT representation, and this is going to be really interesting and impactful to see how it affects the coming years of Marvel itself. Every single time the Kree or Skrull get mentioned in the MCU, I'm hoping for some sort of reference to this character, because he does have really important and interesting ties that I still think to this day haven't been fully explored enough or very interestingly in the comics, with him being the son of a Kree and Skrull royal family. I think there's a lot of potential there, especially if they properly take the time to develop his character and his relationships, whether that be with his Earth family or with Billy itself. I think he could provide a very cool plotline, and I'm hoping at the very latest we start seeing hints or Easter eggs to him in some capacity in the upcoming Secret Invasion on Disney+. Now, apart from all of these canonized Young Avengers characters from the comics, I do think there's some possible wiggle room for us to see more characters join this roster in the future. I think this is all going to depend on what happens to our current heroes we have on screen, and the heroes that are going to be introduced very soon that have already been acknowledged by people like Kevin Feige. So, for example, we see Kamala Khan, who I think has potential to join, based on just other people I've seen talking online, and also her age. I think if anything, if Miles ends up joining the main timeline, I can see Miles possibly at some point crossing over into the YA in some capacity as well, which I think could be really interesting. I almost hope that Spider-Man doesn't join the YA because I think he's such an important solo character at the moment. I feel like we're definitely going to get a stature arc in some regard because they did recast her to have a more famous actress, and it seems like a given at this point. And we're getting Quantumania, so we know this guy has to live up until that movie at least, but I am very interested to see what Marvel does in regards to Scott and seeing if they actually do kill Ant-Man, especially because he's becoming a more and more loved character as the movies seem to progress. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to be all for me. I really hope you enjoyed this and you found this informative. I am going to be posting about Marvel and other fun things as the months go on. You can leave a comment down below about some Marvel topic you'd like to hear me cover, or about any other related to the Young Avengers that you find interesting or you were excited to see in the future, or just any questions you have about the YA. I'd be happy to figure it out for you and let you know. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it. We're trying to grow the channel into the new year, and I thank you once again for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Anyways, I'll be seeing you. Thanks for watching.